She said it's okay.
So call this meeting to order, the finance meeting. Let's see, roll call. Members and establish a forum.
Kate McDonald here.
Amber Brown here. Everyone want to do the school verse?
This is our school. May peace dwell here. May the rooms be full of content. May love abide here. Love one another. Love of our school. And love of life itself. Let us remember that many hands build so many hearts.
Audience to address the committee. Anyone? Is there any agenda modifications? And then we need to approve the minutes from August 10th, 2021. So do I need like a motion?
Yeah, all motion to approve the.
From August 10th, 2021.
And a second.
So all in favor to approve the minutes from August 10th, 2021?
Keep it up.
Amber Brown, aye. All right, so financial reports, charter impact monthly report.
Okay.
All right, can everyone see the presentation? So the 21-22 budget involves a significant amount of one-time funding, federal supplementary funding. And so as we discuss where this forecast is going to go for the year, kind of the two really variable drivers are what is the attendance experience? So this is still using a opening expectation that we may need to shift. And also how are the supplemental funds going to be utilized? So we had the opening assumption of some of the federal money where that would be used this year. And then there was the multi-year money that could be used in the following 2 years after that. So that's essentially in place in this model, although I would expect to see changes next month. Next month, as noted in compliance, the third round of federal money, ESSER 3, requires a board-approved expenditure plan for the multi-year plan. This can be amended. Obviously, it's a multi-year grant. It can be amended as you go. So the plan needs to be brought to the board next month. Right now, that money is not included in this year. It's included in the future years. That's an example of where, when we look at this, we can change this model as we go. So we would expect to be using a surplus near break even because there's so much supplemental money. We wouldn't be using that for a surplus unless, somehow it's covering its eligible activities and we end up with some variance surplus in unrestricted, but other than that, we're not expecting to see a large surplus this year. So we're still building this model, near the budget and revenue, just shifting it. We see some more summer costs. So we bring in more revenue to offset those summer costs as allowable. And cash, much more stable right now, ended the month at about $500,000, $498,000. So I don't have any updates here. We can get updates elsewhere on the activity and in enrollment and attendance. I can show the basis of the budget. I think when we go to next month, we should be able to get the learning period 1 report and I can start updating basically with the learning period reports to show the trend. If we still have an appropriate forecast based on the trend being experienced at the school. So the model in place was built on 290 at 93% to get to about 270. And importantly, the UPP coming in at about 58% on the 3-year. So we have to make sure it's high enough if we had a dip that our 3-year average about 58%, or we'll see a reduction in the funding rate. And so for quick calculation, the LCFF is being calculated at about 9,600. So we usually just think 10,000 per ADA if we're want to see a shift in one direction or another. Oops. So between the years, there's a typo there, it says 2020 versus 2021, but there's 458,000 in this year. So the in-person, the 102,000 right now, we have that allocated to this year. There's no additional strings there, just recognition of that revenue this year. One way or another, the school is eligible for that revenue to use for in-person learning, and that can be included. The expanded learning opportunities grant funds, 189,000, that was included in the plan that was approved at the end of last year. So that's primarily in this year's budget. That should all be this year. So that's included here. There's a note that the state shifted how they will fund the plan. It doesn't change the activities for Blue Oak, but they moved 83,000. It was all state. They moved 83,000 into federal money and out of state. So we'll see some variance in those categories, but not in total revenue. In addition to that, there's the federal programs, some carried forward from last year, and then the 86,000 in the second award are modeled to be used this year. So that's a little over, that's over 150, 160, 70,000 in place this year. And then you can see ESSER 3 for consideration is assumed to be split over the next 2 years when developing the ESSER 3 plan. Looking at the multi-year at this time, it was presumed that the budget was running about 450,000 with this level of supports. And so that could be accomplished in this year. Between ESSER 2 and 3, it could be accomplished next year. And then a little more than half of that the third year. So we're assuming still similar to budget revenue. We'll change that if we have any ADA variance, and we can change the award of the federal money where it should go. But based on the expenses in the budget, this is how we would allocate. Expenses essentially are at budget. The reason they're a little higher is just the timing of summer activities. So they did occur, so that's going to increase, and then we increase the recognition of the revenue that's available for those. So those are covered. We expect to see that. That was an approved increase. And then we have additional cost in the recruiting marketing field that's higher than the original budget as discussed at the board. So as I mentioned earlier, we would expect to see the surplus near zero because we're using $450,000 in one-time funding to provide additional services. So we wouldn't expect to see a surplus here. So this model about $11,000. Fund balance came in at about 1.1 million. So we should end around there. 1.16, about 31%. Cash, fortunately, forecast steady for the year, about 500,000 at the end of August. Should operate right around that level. You know, there's not going to be a significant amount of AR other than normal seasonal timing. We don't have any deferrals in the equation anymore. And so we see the year ending in this model, this break-even model, at about 600,000, operating in the 500 range most of the year. Like I mentioned, in compliance, we have the count day coming up, and in the ESSER plan in October, and then October is a reporting month for quarterlies. Move to the balance sheet. See cash about 500, AR around 400. overall stability of the balance sheet. No significant liabilities other than those we are aware of. Are there any questions about the August financial update?
Is anything being considered, like in the state of California, about possibly seeing increased absences? I mean, because COVID's still going on, and every time a kid gets the sniffles, they're going to take a few days off. I'm just wondering generally.
Yeah, generally speaking, there's the two things that came together was at the state budget passed in summer, before, in advance of this current stage of the pandemic, there was the requirement for governmental districts to offer independent study. Charters were not required, having more independence, but they wanted to ensure that independent study was available to all students. Then with this experience as school reopened, coinciding with this stage of the pandemic, and a lot more quarantining, as you said, whether kids are testing positive or just being removed for safety. The bill that was just passed to update state budget requirement basically is allowing for short-term independent study for quarantining students. But my understanding is that's the only ADA remedy available. So if students are not in person, we want to make sure that in the student information system, we have a flag for all those days students were not in person, noting that it was a quarantine or other COVID reason that they weren't available. And if possible, that they were doing short-term independent study, the school could get credit for that, but I'm not aware of any other way. Excluding that, I believe it will be unpaid absence.
Okay, thank you very much.
So like when Katie's class was quarantined, they wanted it only one day, but then they had us call in, say that the student was doing work. So would that cover it during the study?
I
So that
believe
the
it.
school would be paid.
And when my class was quarantined, I put together a packet, and then the parents just had to help the children keep the packet and turn it in and take a look. It works. I think if the hard part is just tracking down all of the children and getting all of the packets in.
Right.
That's the hard part. I think I've probably written about 25. It feels like maybe we're at 20 independent studies so far this year. But at least parents are asking for it. But it is just about getting it in.
Well, I don't think we knew either, because then I know Maverick missed 2 days of school, and I did keep him out like an extra day just to be super safe. But Jennifer offered me, she said, "Oh, can you work?" And I was like, "Yeah." I just didn't think to ask for a first grader because it's usually not that big a deal for first grader. Sixth grader. So,
And I think the trick too is if they are still out, you can call. So if it's like day 2
I
of the
did.
illness, yeah, that's like the trick. But the second they come back on campus, it's too late to ask.
for the independent studies,
Yeah.
do we tell? How we?
I know we passed at the board the new independent study policy, and I think it was put in the parent handbook. Yeah, that's definitely
I mean, I
something.
read that once a time ago. If I read this year's updated one, I mean, just because that might be something that let parents know to make sure they're calling in or communicating with studies at any age. Because again, like my kinder, I probably do that either, but it's going to count like the same. I mean, I would call, but not necessarily an independent study. Yeah. It's not on that, but if it's going to cost the school money, I'm sure the parents will be fine. I mean, Mavericks was like 2 little worksheets. It was, you know. But then, yes, I had to remember to make sure Okay, so, we're done with all that, right? Moving on to business.
Yeah, do we need a motion on that?
Oh, yeah, to approve the charter impact monthly report.
Or recommend it to the
Yeah,
board?
recommend.
Okay.
The charter council.
Okay, so we need a motion to recommend to the charter council for approval of the charter monthly report.
Motion to approve the charter impact monthly report to the charter council for a.
I will second.
All in favor?
Okay, all that. Question, since we don't have the currently, but we're still voting.
I think we do. We have 3 of 5. That's
Okay,
a
so it's
majority,
a-
right?
Yeah.
2 of 5.
Okay, so let's move on. To business established committee member.
Oh.
So by default, I'm chair.
Yes, and I think we need a co-chair and a secretary.
Yeah, because
Susan was a
Frankie-
secretary.
Oh.
I think.
She was.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I guess we can table this.
Yeah, we could table this, just since we don't have all the numbers right now. Yeah. Church secretary.
That might be it. I think that's all I saw last year.
So are you okay with us tabling this?
I don't know enough about Brown Act things.
No, we can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could we make a motion to, I know we were supposed to already, yeah, move it, like modify it to bring it a little bit later? We'd like to do that, and maybe Susan will be here.
I'm just trying to look at the list.
So yeah, I think we've done that.
Had to make certain changes during.
During the meeting?
Mid-meeting.
Yeah, I can't find where I saw the last. Okay. Decided to do. I know that there have been times when we have just said, well,
I wonder what would
oh,
be-
she's coming. Okay.
Yeah, I wonder what would be the problem with tabling it.
Yeah, I feel like there are still a few rules here and there. that I'm like, I don't know.
That's super sad. And math last period too.
By the time I finished with picture day,
Oh,
I sat down in Susan's office and realized, oh, there's a board meeting tonight. I'm almost out of my hours, because I try to fit it in with my 8 hours. So I'm like, I have to leave campus now. I didn't get any other work done. It's like, I'll be back. It was fun though. I liked chatting with all of them kiddos. Wild.
what did you start? It was like one of the hardest days of the year.
It seemed like everyone was struggling today.
The
Probably as
energy
parents
level.
too, like, because, the kiddos want to argue with me about what they're wearing. Picture day is about mom, okay? And now mom wants you to look today.
Yeah, it's
I love
weird. I noticed that a lot of kids dressed up real nice and then like once they took their picture, they went and changed
Oh, they
back
did?
into their normal like grimy clothes.
I
I
love it.
saw a few
Like,
ball
why not?
gowns from some younger
I
grades.
did see a few
Yeah, so
really
cute.
fancy.
Wait, mom wants to. I don't care. Today's not about you. I made them all practice their smile too. Let me see the smile you're gonna do.
I practiced with my little one with his smile. And then I was in the classroom, like forgot to tell a story at the end of the lesson. And I go to draw the curtains and I see that he's up. And it's his turn. And all when he gets nervous, he gets really goofy. And so I see him like falling on the ground and standing back up and falling on the ground and standing back up. And then here comes teacher Cheryl, like picking him up, like it's okay. And then, oh man,
cute.
like maybe I should have waited to pay for pay for the pictures and see how they turned out.
Oh yeah, I've had some funny ones. I've had ones where like their hair is like out like this, but like the one that doesn't even do it. Life Touch. They don't even care what the kids look like. I've gotten some really funny ones. And I've seen some that people like where the kids accidentally like flipping off or something like their fingers are just right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have one where their hair is like this in the picture. Well, it's a memory.
My last class, I think it was 7th grade. We got the group picture and I think one of my boys, he got caught like mid-sneeze. And there was the one they used and his face, like all of us were just dying.
Oh,
And
that's
he was good
awesome.
sport, but
Oh,
we got
that's
some.
awesome. Love it. Everybody. Bouncing.
Oh, yes.
So, I didn't know, we didn't really have everyone, if we should establish committee member roles. So we should wait on that. We could wait on that if we wanted to.
I think you are officially in charge of the meeting. Okay. You don't have a choice about that. So,
Yes.
as far as the rest of it, I think we can wait till we have a representative. I think that's fine.
So we can just move it to next month.
Yeah. Perfect.
We're not sure. Okay, so then we can, I don't know what this is, but accept donations. I'm sure it's gonna be what it is.
Yeah.
What-
We got
but it
some
sounds like-
donations and we want to accept them.
Okay, perfect.
So anything over $500 we put formally in front of this committee and then. So we did have. a donation of $1,000, so-
So I, ask for a motion.
Ask for motion.
Okay, so can I have a motion to accept the donations?
I'll make a motion to accept the donations.
Do I have a second? Donations. Jennifer Brown, aye.
Susan Dominican.
And then to accept contracts.
So this is our contract that is on here is a special education contract for speech therapy. It's standing, it's the same contract as in previous years, which is. We
This is
had,
somebody we contract with.
yes, and they provide the services. We did have some bids out for the providers. for some of them. This one, which is why it's coming so late.
Just one contract.
This is the only contract we have today, isn't it?
So can I have a motion to accept this contract?
No motion to accept the contract for the, I'm sorry, speech therapy services.
Do I have a second? All in favor to accept the contract?
Susan, you're gonna give me.
For foundation grant application.
So this I hope is another easy one. We have a grandparent who has the foundation and but we had some vandalism. Some local 15-year-olds decided to climb up on the roof. So we were able to find out who they were. I'm not sure what to do about it, but because we can. But it brought up the fact again that we're going to so I was able to apply for this grant. And it's already been approved for us. But we still need to go through the process of having the board approve that we can. I told Buck to go ahead. I didn't think that anyone.
Okay, so we need to approve for us to apply for
For this grant.
this grant, okay?
That's for 2,000 something. Do you have that? So it's a little over $2,000 is the cost of the cameras.
10 cameras or 10 rings?
I believe it's a ring of 10 cameras.
Okay.
And
Oh, I
10
see.
solar panels.
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve for us to apply for the grant? School cameras.
I will move to approve or I move to for advising the charter council to approve the grant. This group is an advisory.
I'll second the motion to approve, to recommend the charter council accepts the 4 foundation grants.
All in favor?
Susan, you're gonna get it right.
Next, increase substitute teacher wages.
So we have a. Okay.
I will support.
That's all right. So we have been struggling to get substitutes. And last year we didn't need any, so we were thinking about this, but it came up and actually Chelsea reached out to me. We're at $120 a day. Chico Unified recently increased their daily wage to at least temporarily to $200 a day, which explains why we're not getting any substitutes. So when I became aware that we were so far behind the district, I asked to put this on the agenda so we look at our wages. And I am going to suggest that we meet the chief of unified wage for subs to 200.
Will that like impact us financially? Do we have?
It will impact us financially. However, there is so I would have to sit down with Jim to break that down. It would be about a 30% increase in costs. So it's probably about an extra $1,000 a year. So it's not enough to really break the budget.
I don't know in context of what the school.
Yeah, well, it's, yeah,
Yeah.
it's, and what happens when we don't have subs is that we end up pulling specialties, so we're decreasing our actual.
Yeah.
What we're doing, we know we're not, meeting our intended educational goals.
It's like tougher.
And
Yeah.
Tyrone,
Tyrone.
and Kate's,
Yeah.
and everybody's.
It's only gonna impact $1,000.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I would have to go back to see what we think with subs. Maybe can we go back to the, part that is Jim's report?
Oh.
So, because it would basically be a third again, I'm thinking 2,000, but I may be low, maybe 30,000.
So it's from 120 to 200?
Jim
Yeah.
is still here.
Yeah,
Maybe
maybe
he
$80
knows.
difference. So how many?
Is there a certain-
There's a percentage going down to the actual budget. So if we can read that to see, so especially, let's see, keep going, we want to certified teacher substitute hours. Go over, so it's, we're talking about $3,000 a month. It's not budgeted, so we're talking about 30,000, so it would be about a 10,000 increase. I would say.
And to add, that's just a placeholder, right? The 30,000. So your experience could be lower, higher. It's just an estimate to keep that in place. So it's already, well, school's barely open. So
Yeah, it's hard to say, but hitting that. This is based on past year, previous to last year, past year experiences. So that's what we've been talking about. Still, I wouldn't say that it's a budget breaker. I'd say it's a concern, and we always try to keep our subs down as much as we can. But I think the current situation, we have one dedicated sub who loves us very much. Because of the yes, so
My daughter loves them.
yes, so but he he's not enough. We have, like last Friday, I think we had 3. It becomes this. We want to match that, and I believe that they are saying from what, and Chelsea will have more information, I'm sure, in the charter council. This is a temporary increase. They're not planning it to continue. It's really about what we're dealing with COVID and people having to be out.
More of a demand.
There's a high demand right now on ours.
Okay. So we are going to make a motion to recommend this to the. So can I have a motion to recommend that we increase the substitute teacher wages from 120 a day to 200?
Yes.
I make a motion to recommend the charter council to increase our substitute teacher wages from
I will second the motion, noting that that is a 60.
Sorry,
No, it's not.
I should have let you do the math there. I'm trying to do it in my half in denial. It is a significant increase.
In
But temporary.
in this space, do we need to add temporary to motion?
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Do you want me to start
Redo
over
the
again?
motion.
Okay. I make a motion to recommend to the charter council to temporarily increase the substitute teacher wage from 100 to 200.
Oh, Cameron comes back. sorry.
Member Brown, aye.
Susan Dominican, aye. Thank you. Many people, thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, executive director's reports. The one thing primarily on here is that we do have the annual Brown Act conflict of interest statement. Because you are a Brown Act body, those trainings are highly suggested, especially if you haven't been to one before. These are done by, the ones we are doing are done by Young Money for our legal representation. So are very good and very quality and online. So it makes it a little easier to attend. So that, I don't know how much you talked, and again, I'm sorry I missed it, about our enrollment numbers. I think that, yeah, there it is. So this is something I wanted to go over with you. When we met last, we were looking at the planned enrollment of 291 with a budget that was based on 290. With the events of the last month, with COVID continuing to be a concern for families, masking also a concern for other families. We have seen a significant drop in that. And I asked, Kelly Maki does this for me, and asked her to give you the reasons by numbers and by grade why people have said that they are leaving. So you'll see a majority, there's a few, about 3 in the upper grades, maybe that are just that tendency of 7th and 8th graders to think they want something different. But overall majority, and a few that had some other concerns, but the overall majority are people moving to homeschooling, moving out of the area because of COVID or because of jobs. It's interesting. I was just on a phone call earlier this afternoon, trading. There was somebody in Oregon, and their numbers are up by 100. So that's our, and that's one of the places that our parents are and families are. So this. This is a concern for the budget, something to be aware of. And Jim has asked for some clear numbers on attendance, which we'll be able to give him. We're still, however, with attendance, we're still figuring out independent study. I literally, yesterday, I got some new rules from the state about how to do independent study. So I'm learning to ride the wave. I feel like I need a surfboard.
Yeah, Jim,
Bring my
so
son's surfboard and put it in my office and just stand on it every once in a while.
I asked him about absences being increased because of
Sorry,
this
yeah, I was trying to see.
COVID fear and quarantining, and he somewhat explained the independence study.
There is, I'm still putting a question out on it though, because yes, we close down a classroom and we go to independent study. So that, and they've said that doesn't affect us. But when a family decides they don't want to come to school because of COVID, not because they can't, but because they don't want to, how does that, how does that affect us? Because that's really affecting us as much as actually us having to do something because of that. It's really the fear.
Because about 19, probably half of those, I don't know, I had 20 on one side, 19 there, half of those left because of COVID. And so you're saying,
Yeah, so that's, so the actual enrollment is down because of it.
right, okay,
Significantly because of COVID. In California as a whole, enrollment is down 2.7%. In Chico Unified, it's down 2.6%. In Butte County, it's at 5.7%. So we are in that mix also. So this is not that Wilkes got a problem. This is really we're dealing with this as a state as well as a community. So, and we're still, you know, the effects of the fires both this year and past years are also a part of that. People are still struggling with overcoming those issues as well. I have one family, for example, that's been on independent study for the year because of asthma, and so they're wanting to come back to the community, but they're close for the health of their child. So those are, you know, so we're still dealing with all of that, and then asking the states, the people that represent us in the state, to really make sure that broad need is looked at it, not just did you close a class or not, but were they required to quarantine? But really deal with the fact that this is a much bigger issue than just whether or not the numbers align in just the right way. So we have to do that. And I'm also working on the testing process so that we can have testing on site in October, so that both parents and students and staff that are not something happens in the classroom, we can have the testing there and return to us. Right now, the you know, it can take 4 to 5 days. I'm talking about the days. So many different terms, reasons for testing.
Is it, do the rapid ones, can they not use those? I mean, are you guys trying to get those on campus?
The rapid tests are all right, they're not as accurate, so what happens if you get a positive on that is then you have to send the person out for another test. So it's, you know, it's, and then so you're wondering, yeah, so we're trying to get the PCR tests, which the company that the charters are working with has a 48-hour turnaround.
Okay. So with the ones that went to homeschool, so we don't offer homeschool, right? So that's called independent study.
We offer independent study.
But they left to another. homeschool
Yeah, they're
program.
going to a full-on homeschool program that's not connected to a classroom situation. So it would be more of an online program when we're not as able to do because the teachers are in the classroom.
So with those, I mean, that still count as, if they're still residing in California, when they go onto these homeschool programs, do they say that they're getting, or just, is there no way for the state to see what, if they're homeschooling in California or homeschooling somewhere else?
So an independent study homeschool, which is like Corview, or there's one out of like school over in Glenn County and a number of too. They're still collecting ADA from the state, so they're still within the state. They're just not in a classroom. The other term that homeschool is often used for is what is officially called direct to state, when you actually become your own school. So you as a parent put an application in, and then you say that you're educating your children, and that's a little bit easier because
There's not a lot of guidelines.
there's not any
California,
guidelines.
yeah, I was gonna say California is.
So we're not seeing students leave to go to strictly to direct to state homeschool or their school. We're seeing them go to another established organization, primarily something that's very flexible and online, which we would not.
Yep. Makes sense. And then, just because I'm trying to understand how it all works, when they say that enrollment's down, is that enrollment in in-person learning, or that's enrollment in school in California? Like, they don't see them in a homeschool, they don't see them in public school, they don't see them popping up in school at all.
Correct. They could be
Okay.
going to private schools.
That would be the
They're-
only
they-
difference.
Yeah, that
Okay.
would be the only thing. If they were going to private school.
That would surprise me, like 5% of Chico.
is going to private school, yeah. We would
Then
know
we don't
that
have
if
the
that
space
was
for
happening.
that. Yeah, right.
Well,
We would
why,
know that.
why did Notre Dame's enrollment increase? I heard that recently.
It did increase.
That it increased like over the pandemic.
Yeah, it did. Because they were held to the same restrictions that we were supposed to. They are now, I believe.
They are now, but they weren't.
But they were
not.
so during last
Oh,
year.
They
okay.
were
we
not doing some of this.
masking and hand washing and all that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were requiring some masks, but only while the kids were sitting at their desks. So different things that they.
Yeah.
Okay, so, wow, so that's like 5 to 6% and 5% in Butte County where the kids have
Just left.
Left.
Have left. Yeah.
And it would not be, I mean, do you guys usually experience a little bit of a dropout at the beginning of the school year? The settling in period, is that normal or to lose a few kids, but 19 is just?
Yeah, it's not abnormal for us to lose a few percentages from during August. But this is large. This is a large amount.
And normally we're about 290, you were saying the budget.
We're budget off of 290 and that was, it's actually 2 years ago, we were at 310 and because we've had the last 2 years, our 8th grade classes have been 2 classes and reduced down to 1, first grade and second grade. I've been reducing the numbers intentionally because of that, but this was more than I just.
Is there like a budgeting threshold as far as how it goes with attendance? Like if you have under 300, you have funding, or is it literally per student?
It's per student.
Okay.
They're
So it's
different
important.
tiers since.
That's what I
talking
meant,
about
like a tier.
There are different tiers for grade levels. So
Okay,
kindergarten, 1st through 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, 7th, and 8th all have different amounts per student.
okay.
Yeah. But,
As far as the funding goes.
as far as the funding
Got
goes,
it,
but
okay.
it's still a funding.
But it's
per
still a
student.
per student, so one student is money lost.
And that
Equal
was
to
ninth. That we're down.
9, yeah, I had 20, I had 21, but then I looked here. And I saw the difference was, I think it was 291 versus 2, now we're at 272. Okay. That was, sorry, a lot of questions to me, because I know that really drives all the funding, so I was just wanted to make sure I can understand how it works. Because Alex and I were talking about too, if the parents really realize when they're on, when they're, when the kids get quarantined, what that means for them, if they need to do work with the student, if they need to call in, maybe the parents don't know and they're not sure right now how that works, so they'll still get funding, but once we know, we should let. If you would want to let parents know.
Yeah, we do some education. It's just really hard to manage it. We do have the families that are planning to go out. The hard ones are the kids that are actually, the kids are sick for days. Or part of the work that I'm doing, I talked about it a little bit at the board is really working on we have a large chronic attendance, which is they're here less than 90% of the time. And so that's probably our biggest concern is how, and I'm working with Emma Todd, the counselor, to reaching out and looking at what's going on with these schools.
And so
Historically, we have a large number at Blue Oak. That, just comes off of this thing.
So if the parent calls, it's excused and then maybe get funding. No. Oh.
They only get
Got it.
funding if they come and attend or if they're on an independent study. One or the other.
Wow.
So if they call, then they don't go through the truancy process,
Oh,
which is the
okay.
legal process because you're not doing what you're supposed to do as a parent.
Got it.
If they call in, they're basically saying my child is sick. So we don't say that, we gotta bring it anyway.
Right.
So the acceptable level is 90% is 18 absences in a year. Generally 4 to 6 is like okay.
Right.
So when you drop you down to 18, then the question is what's going on with that child? Is that sick?
Right,
You know, do we need to do?
Yeah, most kids miss.
Yeah, for days,
Yeah.
or, you know, they get a cold, they're out for a few days.
Usually it's the same period. of
Yeah,
time.
and it's not like, you know, 2 days a month,
Got it.
here
Okay.
and there, and every Friday or things
So
like
yeah,
that.
that
So
would
those
really
are,
affect.
those
them.
are the things that, yeah, that's a big piece for Blue.
And so then we budget for that?
It's part of the plan. If you look back at the revenue period, we talk about our enrollment and then our percentage attendance, and so that it's adjusted
you-
for a percentage attendance. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm just trying to understand some of your questions.
So back to now students are out more. So for instance, like I know at Katie's class, we got quarantined, we ended up only being for 1 day. So then Katie sent work home.
Mhm.
So did that then count for the school?
As of yesterday, it will count.
Okay, as of yesterday, it will.
Yeah.
So then, for instance, like my other little one got sick and I did keep him out an extra day that I probably wouldn't have normally did, but then Jennifer sent home word and I sent it back.
Mhm.
How,
So there's a form that you need to fill out that says they're on independent study.
oh, so
And
then you have to
that's-
officially
We
do
have
that.
to do that.
Okay, so that's where that plays
Yeah.
into.
So
Okay,
we may have to go back. and
So I'm
clean some of
just-
that up now that we know that there's, you know, from day one. It's usually for Blue Oak, our policy is 2 days. You have to be out for 2 days to do independent study.
right, makes, yeah, I've
Kind of,
done that before, it makes sense on the. third
Yeah.
day.
however, now, because we're in this situation
We
and
have
having to
more
send
absent,
kids,
yeah.
home or parents are going to choose not to have their vaccinated child at school, then we're gonna have work to do. So really grateful for Kelly and Kelly.
So did we,
What they do to organize it.
yeah, so did we budget for more, for kids to be gone more this year? I mean, for-
No, we did
we
not.
did not,
No.
okay, so this is gonna really,
It will affect us.
okay.
The good news is, you know, as we went into this year, with the additional COVID funds, we have 3 years to expend them, so we may end up spending more this year, and, than we intended. And Jim is already asking those questions, so we can change the plans, if we need to do that, or
So I
to
thought,
the extent we need to do.
so I thought funding was frozen for 2 years, so did I misunderstand that, or
No, it was just frozen for one.
it was only frozen for 1 year, so not this year? So
Yeah.
last year we were good, they didn't do it this year?
Yeah.
Okay,
Right, so now we're back to
okay.
ADA-based education. They want us to have our kids in school.
I have a hunch that California will do something about this. It's going to affect every school. I mean, they have a hope. This will be recognized.
I think it is being recognized. I think they're trying to figure it out. And I think it's, you know,
Well,
I
you
don't
can't,
think there's an anticipation for the Delta variant to come through. I really think people are planning like, okay,
yeah,
we're over the big thing, we're done,
that
and
makes
then
sense, yeah.
this hit, and there's a lot more of, whoa, this is.
So,
Next
yeah, they
year.
didn't really think to, because, I mean, it's tough because parents want to keep their kids out and be responsible, but then again, also the school's kind of financially punished for that, not intentionally, but that's what's happening.
Well,
Well,
and
there's-
both the federal and state government have been coming in with additional funds.
So that's supposed to be.
So, yeah, so.
But then we can only use those funds in certain ways too.
Right. Jim and I are pretty good at that.
Okay, I just.
Yeah.
All right. So I went on that whole thing, but do we need to?
No, that's just my report that I
Okay.
wanted to make sure that we had talked about. The
Okay.
other thing I wanted to make sure and tell you, as we're saying, we're not gonna have as much money. I have gone ahead and approved for another 3 months on the, which is under my limits, on moving money into the advertising budget. Because it didn't feel like a good time to stop
No.
our advertising right now.
Yeah,
So I
well,
went
if
ahead,
enrollment's down.
yeah,
Yeah, that makes.
I went ahead and continued that, and Alex and I are meeting with the firm tomorrow to talk about, you know, how continue to work on enrollment curriculum this year, and then also starting the conversation. This is the time that people are beginning to look for where they're going to be next year, and so to make sure that we're making sure that we're voting for next year's classes as well. Yeah, this is the time. October is the time that people are really where they're going to put their next year's.
Another question. I remember hearing at in-service that COVID leave for teachers and people at our school is going to be over at the end of this month.
That is
And that,
state line.
is-
Yeah.
okay, and so that was state funded, and so that funding is. Okay.
Yeah, and we'll see, well, they just closed the legislative session, but I would not be surprised if that is continued. And I think that there's a lot of stagnation right now until today is over. And the recall election is over. There's just like nobody saying anything about stuff. And so I would think that there may be some changes. They talked about they've said brown eyed bodies have to all be in the same room together now.
Oh,
And
yeah.
one of the things they're talking about is that would probably be extended for another 6 months or so. So while we're getting through this next piece. Yeah.
Absolutely. So was that it? Or plans?
That is, yeah, oh, okay. Yes, so that's my report. The next thing is the sustainable schools design. Task Force. So we talked about that pretty much in length for your information. And some new members a month or so ago. So last month or month.
Oh, I was on.
Okay, you were there.
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked about what a sustainable school is and the role of this committee versus the whole plan. So we have an in-service day in November, the 12th, which we usually use for training, but I've asked that we use that for faculty, and I will also invite classified staff to come to have that discussion with the faculty, what are we looking at as far as what is a sustainable school. There are some pretty major changes that have come down this year around preschool, around increase in additional kindergarten, and the expectation that those services will be offered to all children. And so so that will also be part of the whole discussion, along with the 2 tracks or 1 track. And a big part of it for me is, as we look at a new building, these are discussions we have to have before we. So hoping to get some really good information in November and then have a real plan. So trying to pull all the preschool, TK, all of that information together. And so we're working on that, but I'm feeling like we'll have by our probably December meeting presentation ready for us to discuss with sustainable schools.
So that was it, right? Okay. So next meeting gonna be Tuesday, October 12th at 4:15. That's good with her. Adjourn the meeting.